Hi everyone, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the Sewing Room channel. I'm going to be giving you a beginner's sewing machine tip. I'm going to go over how to do a French seam, and it's a seam that's used in clothing. It's mostly used on your finer formal wear fabrics, but you'll see it in casual clothing also. It's also a great way to do a seam on sheer fabric so you don't see those raw edges through the fabric. Okay, let's get started. I often make neck scarves, and I like to use either gauze fabric like this one, or I'll use the chiffon fabrics like this. Now this is what I call a closed scarf. It's a tube, and so you don't really see the seam all that well in it. But sometimes I make a neck scarf where it is open. So I'm going to open this up, and you see the back of the fabric as well as the front of the fabric. And you will sometimes find scarves like this even in the stores when you buy them. The thing that's unique about this one is I used two different colors of gauze fabrics to bring them together to make an infinity scarves. And so that the seam would look neat and tidy, I used the French seam. So when making scarves, it's really a really nice seam to use. So let me show you how to get your fabric ready to do the French seam. Now this is cotton fabric, and this is the back of the fabric. It's also called wrong side. I call it back side. It's the not so pretty side. Normally when we do a seam, we bring the pretty sides of the fabric together and then stitch it. But in a French seam, it's just the opposite. You bring the back side or wrong sides of the fabric together. And then to do your seam, you do a very narrow seam, and I did about 1/8 of an inch wide seam along here. Then you go to your ironing board and press the seam. Pressing is a very important part of sewing, and you don't want to skip that step. Your stitching will come out much nicer. So then, after you press it, you unfold like this and bring the pretty sides or the right sides of the fabric together. And then press the seam one more time. Now you're going to do a 1/2 inch wide seam. So when you're making clothing, the standard width for making clothing in a seam is 5/8 inch. That's for most seams, not all. So by doing the 1/8 wide seam on the other side and then folding it, now I need to do the other 1/2 inch. So that totals up to 5/8 inch wide seam. So do a 1/2 inch along here. And then you want to press the seam one more time. And so I'm going to open up the fabric. And so you can see that from the front of the fabric or the outside of the garment, it looks just the same as any other seam, except the raw edges are hidden and you don't have to worry about those raw edges unraveling during the wash cycle. Now, this is a chiffon-like fabric here. And so we saw that what it looked like on the scarf. So here's the seam from that last final 1/2 inch wide seam, and then here it is on the front. There is a difference that you need to do as far as in the setup when you're working with chiffon. When you're working with the chiffon fabrics or very lightweight fabrics, you want to use a presser foot that looks like this. It's got just a little hole in there and a little slit so that you can see your stitch line. The other thing that you need to be aware of when working on chiffon fabrics is that here is a throat plate. Many of your sewing machines come with 2 throat plates. If you're working with chiffon or really light, fine fabrics, You want to make sure you have the throat plate on there with just the small hole, not the wide hole, the one that you use for doing a zigzag stitch, because your chiffon fabrics can easily get stuck down in that wide hole, and chances are you're going to tear your fabric trying to get it out. So make sure that you switch the throat plate out when working with your chiffons. Well, I hope this sewing machine tip was helpful to you. If you're interested in other beginner sewing machine tips, I have many. So you want to check below your YouTube screen for that playlist. Also, I'm going to have some suggested clothing tutorials for you to also view. If you would like to get into sewing clothing more, the best way to do it is to watch as many tutorials on sewing clothing that you can. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and make sure you check out my Facebook page. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing. If you like the Sewing Room channel, one of the best ways to show your support is to subscribe by clicking on that red subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. And make sure you click on the bell so you receive notifications for all my new videos. I'm Cheryl. This is Manny, and this is Scotty. See you next time.